Well, hi, everyone. So my name is Jim Dorfel. I'm a chairperson for the SGC, and we'll see how much longer that lasts. We have elections coming up here, but I wanted to welcome you to the last general membership meeting of the year for 2022. I'm gonna try and share out if I can figure out how to do this thing. Share out my desktop, and then we'll just take a quick look at the agenda here. So I think Noel Wade is going to be a little bit late in joining us. I think he's stuck at work tonight, but fortunately we have Henry Reback on line with us. And so first of all, we have 34 people that are signed up for the SGC Banquet that's coming up this Saturday on the 10th. Thank you to everybody that is interested. I think we're going to have a really great brunch that's set up there at McMinimans in Bothell. We'll see how many more people want to join up next year, but it's definitely a breakfasty, lunchy kind of thing that's going to be happening along with the awards banquet. And so with that, we still actually have a few gaps at this point in with regards to some of the flights that we're trying to track down that happened over the past year. So what I'd like to do is actually turn that over to Henry Reback. Henry, did I see that you were online?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, hi everyone. So I got tasked with the job of kind of trying to collate all these different awards and figure out who had good flights this year and what they did. And it's the first time I've done it, so I'm kind of slightly out of my depth on it. But I've had the best stab I can, and I guess I thought, can I share my screen somehow? Just so that we can remind people of what all the different awards are. I don't know how familiar everybody is with all the awards, but this is kind of the awards that we give out every year, and I just thought I would really just open up the floor. If anybody's got anybody they know or they want to nominate, and you don't have to tell me now, but just send me an email after the meeting, or try and point me in the right direction, because it would be great to get all of these awards correct, and any more nominations if we've missed some. So I'll just go through the awards in turn. So the Knights of the Open Field and the Clodbuster are two for kind of interesting outlandings that may have occurred this year. So if you guys know of anybody that's done interesting outlanding, the Knights of the Open Field is for the first outlanding that somebody's done. So we haven't got anybody. I've not been told of any of these yet, so please fill me in if you know those. And the Clodbuster is if somebody's made an off-field landing during a local flight, so when they weren't really planning it. Cross Cascades is kind of one of the. Anybody got any spectacular flights they've done from east to west? Now, finding the definition of what it actually means to get all the way across the foothills has been something of a problem, and I think we're going to have a fairly loose definition of this one for this year's. I've only got one nomination so far, but if anybody knows of anybody else that may have flown across the mountains this year, that would be great. Student Pilot Award, anybody who's made the greatest progress during the year. So please put your hand up if anybody can enlighten me on these. We've had a few. And then these ones with no nominations. So air safety. I'm sure you guys who've been out of freight a lot more than I have will know who's really just made a good contribution to safe soaring in the past year. Unsung hero, Cruz, who's been out there picking people out of fields during the regionals or just during flights generally. Any spectacular crewing effort that we should know about? Let's try and get that on the awards ceremony. The Joe Robertson Memorial Trophy. This is the pilot making the greatest gain of altitude during a soaring flight originating in Washington State. So I'm pretty sure I've got these covered because I've got all the OLC flights, and I've been able to go through. But if there's anybody else that's done anything that's not on OLC, then that would be good to know about. The same goes for the Arnold J. Carson Memorial Trophy. Again, I've been able to go through OLC and find all those flights, but if there's something I don't know about, anybody just send out flights. We want to celebrate all these great flights. And I don't know who would be the best person, Jim, who really understands the exact rules. I've not been able to track down the rules of how they actually judge some of these awards. And so I specifically award for the Columbia Basin Broken Leg and the Roger Frank. Now, on the Roger Frank Memorial Trophy, it talks about the document should be judged by the Washington State Governor. Does anybody know what that refers to, or what we need to do for that?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, we get hold of Inslee. He's probably never even heard of a glider.
Right.
So,
it seems slightly bizarre when
SSA has a governor for each state. The SSA should specify. There's like for Oregon, it's Mike Bamberg, but I don't know who the Washington State SSA governor is.
You know,
yeah, I'm not sure.
Kevin
I'm not sure either. It was Steve Northcraft.
Well, it was for a while, and then it was Craig Funston. Yeah. And I don't know if Craig still holds that position or if Kevin Finke has that.
Yeah, I think we can find out though.
Yeah, we can. I think I can send off a quick text here to Craig and find out if he might know. But
okay, that would be really handy if we could do that in the next few days. That would be super helpful to get it all wrapped up before the weekend. So.
Well, especially if somebody has done a 300K triangle.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some. I've had some 500Ks that have been submitted.
Okay.
And I assume a 500K fulfills all the requirements, so that should be no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last couple of awards is just on individuals who made outstanding contributions. So anybody who's been really helpful this year, or over the past years that we would want to just kind of send our thanks to and appreciate at the banquet on Saturday. That would be great.
Yeah, and Henry, that one's not limited in terms of how many people we have. It's not a single award.
Okay, right, great.
I can make as many awards for great things people have done if somebody really wants us to recognize them. So don't be hesitant.
Okay.
Especially into what we've gone through with the COVID-19 and all that, and all the big help that we've had.
Okay, great. So so everybody on the call today, if you can, if you know of people that have done cool stuff this year, let us know in the next day or so, and we'll try and get these filled in.
Excellent. Thank you, Henry. Appreciate it. Ron,
no
thanks
problem
for your input there.
Yep.
Okay, now I'll try and stop sharing this somehow. I actually don't know how to stop sharing it.
So let's see. I think if you go up to where your chair was.
I think that was just for the Excel. I needed the one that was outside this. And this will do it. There you go.
Okay.
Great.
So
okay.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Henry.
Okay, thanks. I can only stick around for the next 20 minutes, but I'll stay as long as I can.
Okay, sounds good. So next up on the agenda, we have the financial state with our treasurer, Randy Scott. Randy, are you? I think I saw your name in there.
Yep, I'm here.
Great.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen too. Let me make this 70. How's that? A little better? Can't see everything, but
how's that working for others?
And just barely read it.
You can just barely read it. Well, all of this stuff is actually posted on our site, on the board site anyway. I don't know if the rank and file members have access to this or not, but this is the typical monthly statement that I am working with. As you can see at the top, it goes by month across the top, and then the first chunk of it here with the green bar is the income. For the month of November, we brought in $80 in membership dues, another $220 in use fees, Tow fees, 126.41, and then we brought in some money for the event, the banquet, for a total of $1,976.41 for the month. And then in expenses, as I scroll down here, you'll see our typical at the top, the bank fees, the utilities, power, water, sewer, telephone. That iFiber internet is in red because we were charged that, but that was a mistake by iFiber. The internet was actually turned off once the clubhouse was closed down in October, but they continued to bill us and they will be refunding that. And then a little farther down, you'll see the banquet expense so far. I think that was the down payment that Jim put down at $600 for a total of expenses of $922.82 with a net profit this month of $1,053.59. These are the balances in our checking account. This is through the end of November. So we started out with 11,000 and we lost 3,000. And these were checks that cleared that were issued in October. The Fidelity account is up to 17,198.17. So total cash that we have on hand is 25,497.97. I have some really good news this month to give you. There are no accounts receivable. Everyone, as of today, has paid their tow fees for the year 2022. We are clear of all of that. So,
thank you.
Okay.
But kind of put this in a little bit of different perspective. Can you, and sorry to put you on the spot, but how much have we had, for example, in years past prior to COVID, based on analysis that you've done?
Well, the last few years have been pretty rough financially on the organization, as most of you who've been paying attention know. COVID put a real dent in the finances, and as of this year, we are on track to lose about $20,000. Right now, we're down $7,700, as you can see on this profit and loss sheet on the main thing that I'm showing you over here. Over to the right, we are down. We brought in. If you scroll up here, you'll see we brought in $59,000 this year. We spent $66,000 so far, and for a net loss of about $7,700. And the organization, and I haven't been around long enough to know where the initial cash came from for the organization, but it had always hovered around, and I want to say going back 15 years, somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 of cash that the organization had. And over the last few years, that has continually been eroded. And if you take a look at, I presented a sheet here recently, you'll see that last year we lost about $32,000 in our income versus our expenses. And so we really are getting down to the point where you're not going to have the cash in the bank to replenish. And so, you know, one of the things that I've been doing is kind of trying to take a look at the expense side of it and trying to think about the idea of us doing some budgeting, and even to the point where we start to put things in buckets and make sure that at least those things get paid for. You know, one of the things that's not on this profit and loss sheet that we haven't paid to this point, and why I say we're going to end up probably the year in the neighborhood of close to $20,000 in the hole, is because we still haven't paid our rent for the facility to the foundation I have a bill here that I received from them a week ago in the neighborhood of $10,000. And so we're really riding this thing on a nub.
Mhm.
And I think that prudently, we need to
Randy,
put
if you
together a
don't-
crew to actually do a real deep examination of what's paying for itself and what's not paying for itself, and how do we move that to keep this thing going.
Right. So Randy, thank you very much for sharing those numbers with us. So we did 259 tows this year. And we actually need to do somewhere around 325 tows to really break even. When you look at the tow planes and the way that our expenses are set up, essentially, we were shut down for about a month due to tow plane issues, and then we were shut down for another month due to basically smoke that has hit us. And smoke has become more and more of a recurring problem throughout the state of Washington. We saw this a few years ago, but it seems to be about once every 3 years that we'll lose at least a few weeks of good soaring weather due to smoke. So that's something else that we need to take into account with regards to the changing climate. Not so much about global warming, it's about the soaring season we're talking about. However you might want to view that, the unfortunate fact is that we're not having quite the same weather that we used to consistently for long summers of good soaring. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and actually share out. If you can stop sharing there.
Well, can you,
sorry.
I've just got the two other reports I wanted to
Okay, I was going to show
put
one
up
of those
here.
reports, but go ahead.
So I'm going to show. Can everybody see this?
Not
It's
really.
too little.
Okay, how do I make
It's pretty
this
small.
How do I zoom this?
If you go to the bottom, there's a magnifying glass.
Oh, yes.
Great. Better. Thank you.
So this is your profit and
Much
loss
better, yeah.
profit and loss statement. Those numbers that I put on the yearly chart, this is where I get them. So you can see the banquet income at $1,550 to this point. General membership dues, that was 2 people paid their dues last month. Some tow fees and trailer parking income. And then down below that, you can see the expenses. For again, a net income of $1,053.59. Questions about that? Okay. So then, oops. Close that out. Now we're going to go to our balance sheet. And again, I'll blow that up a little bit. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is our current balance sheet, our assets at the top. You can see as of the end of November, $8,329 in our checking account. The other chunk of dough is this Fidelity, which is actually at about 17,000 currently. As some of you know, we're working at cleaning up our balance sheet. I don't have the QuickBooks tied into the Fidelity account yet, but that's going to happen this month.
So I just want to point something out. That Fidelity account is actually meant to, that's supposed to be for engine reserve and tow plane maintenance on that. And unfortunately, if we're having to dip into that, that means that we're losing enough money on the other end of the business that we are dipping into our reserves. So when it comes time to overhaul an engine or fix a tow plane, we're not in a good way there. But that's the purpose of the Fidelity account, and that's just for our membership to kind of keep in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, and as I've stated before, we're in the process of cleaning up these balance sheets. I've actually scheduled, I have a meeting with Noel and Craig on the 18th of December. I know some members have expressed some concern that financial statements haven't been posted on the website. And so we're going to clean that up on December 18th. We're going to clean up actually 19, 20, and 21 and get those closed out with numbers that are real. Like for example, you take a look at this balance sheet. One of the issues is that you can see this negative number under event. Well, that thing has actually been in there for about almost 3 years. That PayPal bank negative number has also been in there for about 3 years. And it's just stuff that on a year-to-year basis, you typically clean up on your balance sheet. And so that is what we are in the process of doing. I hope by the end of December, we will have completed that process, and I will have clean balance sheets to project out there starting in January. So you can see the rest of the, another thing, it's a legacy thing. If you look down here, it says other current liabilities. It's actually apparently a tax liability, but the thing is a legacy thing that's inside of QuickBooks that actually doesn't mean anything to us anymore. So cleanup is what we're doing right now. Questions? Okay, I think that that'll conclude my report.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate it. If Randy, if you could actually just stay on for just another minute,
Sure.
I'm going to show another document here.
Okay, do you want me to unshare?
Yes, please, and I'll share it.
I
from my
can
end.
here. Let me see if I can do that. How do I do that? Oh, here we go.
Whoever wants to share should be able to just share, and that'll take over.
Okay.
Okay, go for it then,
That's how
Jim.
it's worked for me.
I'll do that. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
So 2022 is actually, this number is not entirely accurate because it's been updated here recently, and this was a report that was provided partway throughout the year. But what I'd like to point out is if you look at basically going from 2009 all the way up through 2021, we were doing reasonably well in some of these areas, but it's kind of been up and down in terms of activity. But what you'll notice is that we've got for 2009 what our year-ending balance was, and you can see that that early on we were in a pretty healthy, financially not great but reasonably healthy. And then if you come over here and you look at what the income was that essentially was in these areas, 2019 and 2020 and 2021, this is where we start to see some really serious issues, particularly in 2021 where it catches up with us in terms of expenses. But in these areas, we had a lot more tows, and what I should do is actually go and plot this against the number of tows, so in this time frame, we were in the 500 to 600 500, 600 tows in that area. And it works out that you need roughly 300 to 325 tows per tow plane to make it break even and maybe make a little bit of money, but you also need to be making up for gas. And with gas, avgas kind of hovering around the $7.50 to $8 per gallon mark over the past year, that's made it rough. So we had to increase rates based on that, and that helps soften the blow, but we're still in a pretty rough way right here. So, but the reason that I'm bringing this up is that this plays a very direct role in terms of the future of the club, of the Seattle Glider Council. So we've got two parts to it. We have the Seattle Glider Council, and then we have the Seattle Glider Council Soaring Foundation. And not trying to dive down into the weeds too much, but essentially the SGC they're both nonprofits, but the SGC itself is organized as a 501c7. And then the foundation, which is the SGCSF, is organized as a 501c3. And the biggest difference is that when we have donations that are made on a 501c3, you can write those off. Whereas on a 501c7, even though it is still a nonprofit, those are not tax deductible for the donations that are received. So the foundation was providing the DG 1000 and also providing an opportunity there for cross-country soaring and training. The foundation is also who owns the training facility / clubhouse, and it's leased back to the SGC. But one of the things that we're finding is that our membership and the level of activity out in Ephrata is diminishing. And so there comes a point in time when you start looking at things and you got to really ask yourself, where do we see ourselves 5 years from now? Where do we see ourselves 10 years from now? And so what I'd like to do is I want to talk with you, the members, and get your input as to where you would like to see the club here 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Do we want to add another 2-place glider? Do we want to add a couple more 2-place gliders? Do we want to have more events? Do we want to have more contests? Or do we simply want to basically get rid of almost all assets with the exception of the training facility and make it a place where clubs from around the Northwest come to and essentially lease it from the SGC? So I open the floor up to folks and to get some feedback.
Hey, that sounds like not many people talking. It's Brian Hart here. I'll throw in my 2 cents worth. We're kind of newbies to this whole thing, but we've got an up-and-coming youth contingent out of Hood River that's, I think, following in Jonathan's footsteps here and becoming fairly serious about soaring. And the whole Ephrata experience for us has been phenomenal. You know, getting out of Hood River and up there. I don't know what that translates to into long term, but it seems to me that you've actually, in addition to the facility and the hard assets you have, the bigger question is, where's membership headed? I mean, it's only the facility only gets used if people go out there and use it, right? So we've got youth members that I think are it's going to be growing in the next few years here that would probably make more use of it. But youth members can't be your bread and butter because it's kind of expensive for youth members to do a whole lot of outside activities. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. If there's some way to grow the youth component of this, I think you might find that you'd see more of them even coming to the point of getting enough to maybe have a junior soaring contest up here someday. But you know, I have no historical perspective on any of this at all. That's just my 2 cents worth from the newbie.
Brian, great. That's excellent input. Thank you very much. And for those of you who don't know Brian or Jonathan, but Jonathan was actually on the front cover of Soaring magazine here. I think what issue was that? That was here this past year in his label. That was fantastic to see.
And by the way, I get to tell you all here now, Jonathan pulled down a Kolstad award. He just won
congratulations.
He's going to be handed the official trophy at the SSA conference in February.
Fantastic.
But we'd like to see more of this. So, you know, our goal isn't just for Jonathan to go out and have fun flying. Our goal is to inspire other youth members to come in and get involved. But, you know, we can't make any promises about what that looks like for the SGC in up and coming, you know, in the coming years here. But we'd certainly like to see it build into a more serious contingent. And you know, as newbies, our perspective is, did we arrive at the wrong time in the soaring culture? I mean, that, you know, it's a serious question that kind of came to us arriving just in the last couple of years when we have no perspective on the history. We'd like to do something to help, you know, grow this. I just don't, I don't know what our part is in this. Maybe very, very minute. I don't know.
Well, actually, I really appreciate you and your entire family coming in, because that's a huge presence out at Ephrata. And that's one thing that I really liked is having you and your wife and Jonathan out there, and the amount of activity and energy that you bring to it. I wish we had more youth that was coming out. I certainly cut my teeth going out to the glider club in Texas and running wings and doing whatever I could to try and get a flight up there. This is maybe something that should we try and run more activities around, trying to run programs, youth programs, as well as trying to get more contests. How many of you have gone out to Dust Up? Okay.
Yep, we've been.
So we got a few folks. If we had more activities, if we had more cross-country activities like that were organized, would you be willing to come out and fly those activities? If we had, for example, OLC contests that had some additional cross-country coaches from experienced mentors, and maybe even an instructor or two out there.
So this is Randy Scott, and I'm a newbie too, and I've been going out to Ephrata since 17. I started out helping as ground crew for contests and doing that kind of activity. One of the things that I honestly notice about Ephrata that's lacking is just a real training component there. And I know that there are, the Dust Up is an event where you can go and get, prepared for summer and do a little bit of stuff. But there really isn't a training component there. There's not a two-place glider that's there regularly for anyone to come and use and train. There's not an instructor there. There is, of course, a tow plane there, and usually a tow plane pilot. But even, during the weekdays, that's sporadic. And I think that the direction the organization needs to go, if they want to grow, is they've got to have some serious training components out there at Ephrata, whether that's borrowing instructors and two-seat gliders from other clubs at times or whatever. They've got to have a plan for that, because that not only will attract a youth contingent, but also, like I went to Williams to get my add-on to my pilot certificate for gliders. And, that's quite a distance to travel, and I probably could have done it closer, join one of the clubs, but I honestly think Ephrata is a great place to go and do that. It just doesn't seem to be a regular training component there.
I'm kind of new too. First time out there in Ephrata last year. Unfortunately, couldn't spend as much time as I wanted, but I've been in other organizations where we have faced this sort of issue before as well. It's never easy, but I tend to agree with what was Randy just said, and I've kind of suggested this for Evergreen as well, as to do something like you do at Williams or down in Arizona. And it doesn't have to be like every week. It's like maybe do two or three a year kind of thing, but do a full-time week-long training session where 4 or 5 people can go and get their glider rating over that time period. It might be a way to kind of get a lot of activity during that time period, and maybe we have people. Can you have people, come in from other parts of the Washington area or Oregon area to get flight reviews, for example? Are there other activities like that might be useful. Afraid is a great place to go do some of that kind of stuff, right? That's my 2 cents. And my other 2 cents would be it'd be a huge shame if that facility went away. That would be a big
Thanks, Mark.
loss, in my opinion.
What are you thinking in terms of, who do you think? So part of that is the requirement to actually have a two-place glider that's a decent training ship, that something well beyond a 233, preferably something well beyond an L23. Something you could actually go out and do a little bit of cross country with, as well as do some training in BFRs and pick up friends and that sort of thing. So are you thinking that Evergreen would bring something over? Do you think that another club, or should there be a locally formed club? Or do you think the SGC should look at getting a two-place glider, or a couple of different two-place gliders?
Honestly, I think you have quite a few gliders around. You could, maybe arrange to have some deal between the two clubs or whatever to, if you didn't do it every weekend and did it like, 3 times a year or 4 times a year or whatever the number is, it kind of depends on what time of the year you're talking about, I would say, to some extent, right? Maybe you could share a glider with Evergreen or another club that, in September or something, when maybe the flying weather's not so hot out in Washington or, on the west side of the mountains, whereas it might be halfway decent or better anyway on the east side. I don't know.
Thank you.
One thing to consider is this sort of partnership with the SSA. If you go to the SSA website, and we drove Jonathan all the way to Ohio last year for a thermal camp at Cedar Creek.
Yeah.
And having something that's listed on the SSA as a thermal camp, you'd have to put it right smack in the middle of your, your best soaring weather out there. But they didn't actually, this was a local club. Maybe most of the people that came were from the local club. We took our LaBelle, but it didn't even require a two-place necessarily. They were kind of doing sort of seminars in the mornings on how to find thermals, how to work them, and then they did buddy flights. And where they had two-place gliders, they were doubling up. This is not uncommon. The SSA has these events around the country, and I think a formal thing like that might, it's one way of planning an event, that it would get more visibility and maybe attract some pilots from outside the area to come to it. One of the problems you have not being a local club is, there's insurance questions. There's who's the instructor going to be? Where does he come from? Do you just have Hood River Soaring bring the ASK 21 up, and then, or Willamette bring their Grobe over? Those kind of things. Maybe you rotate those. I think what you guys need here is a subcommittee to study all this stuff, to really look at what would work well. The SSA will reimburse juniors up to 10 per year. They'll reimburse juniors up to $400 for going to glider camp. Jonathan got the cost of, now we had to drive all the way to Ohio to do it, so we didn't exactly make money on the deal, but he got the cost of the camp reimbursed by the SSA because they're looking to promote this stuff. And other than the Region 8 contest, I don't see that SGC's, again, I'm complete newbie, so forgive me if I'm misstating this, but I don't see the SGC really prominent in the SSA like some of the old individual clubs are. You're in a position, though, I think, to be, you have this prime soaring territory, and you've got an excellent facility out there, and finding ways to leverage that for maybe to attract other people from other areas to some events. You have some come to the dust up from as far as ways, let's say Montana, but when we went to Ohio, there was a guy there from Texas and the Hearts from Washington, so I think you've got everything sitting there. Somebody's got to take the bull by the horns. Don't name me, by the way, but I'll be glad to help if anybody wants to kind of brainstorm this stuff. But I think, we brought 2 or 3 youth members up from Hood River, and we've got a bunch of them now that want to get 150 hours in a glider as part of their 250-hour commercial requirement, which means they're going to have to learn to soar. And they're not going to do it just at Hood River in the wave. They need a freighter. And, I can't guarantee we're going to bring 20 of them, but I'd like to see this grow as something that really contributes to this next generation.
How do you find enough instructors, and do they have to pay for the instruction? What's the revenue?
Well, for the camps, that's all kind of negotiable. I think the one in Caesar Creek out there, it's right down the street from the Wright brothers' backyard, out of Dayton. There is they were, I think it was $400 for the camp, and you could pitch your tent out there, or you could rent space, whatever. And then that just included basically all sort of the ground instruction. Then you paid separately for tows, and you paid for instruction. A lot of people that came, they weren't even students. They just wanted to learn how to thermal. They were probably what your classic target market is here. People that already have a license, they're learning the thermal. There's no reason you couldn't put on a week that the goal is to lead towards a check ride. I think there are possibilities if you target, and it may take a fair amount of work and discussion, but again, it's a good question because the SGC doesn't have an instructor per se, right? It's all the local organizations that have instructors. And you've got to cover your insurance requirements and all of that stuff in the middle of this. So that's above my pay grade.
Well, I think one of the dilemmas is that instructors have to pay so much more nowadays to get their ratings, and then they go off and instruct power where they actually get paid by the hour rather than giving away their free instruction.
Yeah, well, by the way, at Hood River, the instructors are paid $65. Well, they charge the students $65 an hour for instructor time in the gliders. So it's not cheap for the students starting out, and they're highly motivated to start soloing when they don't have to pay for all that instructor time. But they do pay the instructors enough, but even so, they only have one instructor down there right now. So that each individual group, each individual instructor would have to come up with what they think they can work with there. I'm just saying that you've got the facility to maybe have some events that are focused on either thermal camp or a check ride prep, something of that nature. Everything's there. I'd say I'd hate to see it go to waste. It's just everything's so good about it.
Well, that's really interesting. I think you bring up some excellent points. And yeah, paying instructors makes a lot of sense. I think that the idea of paying it forward started changing actually decades ago. And all too often we've seen people come in over the past number of years, they'll take a number of flights and then they'll leave, and that system doesn't work quite as well or at all like it used to, which is unfortunate. But I agree, if somebody is paying for something, they tend to appreciate it a whole lot more. And
with juniors, you work out a scholarship program so that the instructors get paid, but you've got somebody that's helping fund it. I mean, there are ways of doing that. And you keep in mind, when you mention Williams or Estrella, those are commercial operations. Those guys are full-time instructors, and they do aerobatic instruction and other things there as well. So it's a different ball game from the SGC here, where you're just sort of an umbrella organization that allows others to participate. All to be discussed, right? I just think there's somewhere to head with all of this.
Absolutely. I noticed, Zoab, did you have a comment? I think you put your hand up.
Sohaib. I think I'm a very new soaring pilot as well, similar to kind of what Mark and I think it was Randy were saying. I think I just wanted to kind of plus one and echo what they said as well. I feel very same in that regards. Like I see SGC as kind of two things. One is just kind of this organization that's helping organize events essentially, and the second thing I would love to have more of is definitely the training camps. For my rating, like I went all the way to Arizona to be like, okay, 1 week of concentrated training and get it done over. I think that was like very well, like I see that was a good financial and a good time decision for personally for myself as well. Like similarly, I would like to see more training camps, which is like, hey, maybe spread out during the season. It's like I think someone was mentioning thermal camp, mountain wave flying camp, and then have instructors or planes there, and then have people pre-registered. And yes, like if it means like the only way we can get those instructors is having paid instructors. Again, I'm just opinion of one. Like I'm personally like, okay, like I would rather do that and have a concentrated training so that I later on can be more confident when I go to Ephrata or go to other places and actually go for thermaling or mountain wave flying by myself as well. So certainly plus one on terms of like more organized training camps.
Great, thank you very much. Now, Zoab, did you participate in the Evergreen week-long encampment?
I couldn't go to the encampment, but I was there for dust up. And yeah, I do plan to go to the encampment next year.
Okay. I'm wondering if there was more than just one encampment, especially by multiple clubs. For example, having Hood River come up and also Willamette Valley. I know that we even have a group that comes out underneath Tony Wiedeker. That's part of the New York Soaring crowd that's out there for a week. That provides a lot of activity. What we're interested in doing is we have to make a pretty important choice here pretty soon in terms of either we need to downsize and cut our budget and go to absolute minimum, or we need to start going big and really growing the pilot population and trying to grow Soaring in the Northwest. And we're certainly not going to get there on the path that we're headed at the moment. And that's one of the reasons that I'm coming to you and the board is coming to you with various ideas is you are the membership. What would you like to see and what would get you guys excited about getting out there and spending time, chasing dust devils? And if part of it's just maybe looking for additional training and hosting events and, putting the fun back into it, we'd really like to hear about it. And thank you, Brian and Zoab and Mark for the input that you've provided. Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I kind of feel like I will be beating a dead horse with this story, but I just wanted to relay my experience over the last couple of dust ups that I've went to. So I've been to 2 dust ups. I signed up for on the website, to use a glider. I signed up to receive instruction from an instructor. And of the 2 years that I've been out there, I have received exactly 0 training and 0 flights because the instructors that were signed up on the website never actually instructed. The ones 1 year that the instructors were there, they were all busy with other students and didn't have time to work with me. And then the airplanes that I signed up for weren't available, or one person took the airplane and was gone all afternoon with it, which didn't allow me to fly. I don't know if I'm a glutton for punishment or what, or what keeps me coming back. But if I wasn't, so interested in the sport, I would have lost interest. I wouldn't be back to do this. I mean, I'm dedicated and I want to learn and grow the hobby and everything. But if somebody were less, motivated as I am to see this through, you would have lost me, or not you, but the clubs and everything. Just because it was such a poor experience, because there was, the services that were offered never materialized. And it was just, the last 2 dust ups have been nothing but frustration for me. So it's, all these suggestions that have been thrown out there, I think are great. It needs to happen, or we need to figure out a way to make it happen. Because we can't, and I'm not the only one. Like this last dust up, I know there was people out there that wanted to go fly and never got an opportunity to fly. So we need to definitely reverse that trend. So that's
Matt, where did you eventually get your training then?
I went to Williams.
Yeah. And did you pay for the instructor?
Down in Williams, yeah. I mean, I've been working with Evergreen, and it was, through COVID and lack of instructors and airplanes and stuff, and Evergreen, it was tough. So I just decided to bite the bullet and go finish up at Evergreen, go finish up at Williams. So I mean, as far as, you know, the evergreen issue is different than well, it's different, but it related to the SGC issues. I mean, they're all kind of related, but, you know, that's just been my experience.
Matt, thank you very much for sharing that, first of all. And I really appreciate you expressing, first of all, explaining your position and what you've experienced. And yeah, I'd be really frustrated too. I've spent too many a day out on in various clubs chasing around, pulling around gliders all day to only get in 1 or 2 flights after spending an entire Saturday doing that, or Sunday. And then, and we've seen this in clubs where you get somebody out there super excited about, you know, about gliding or soaring. And pretty soon what happens is they're out there every weekend, but they're not making a lot of progress because you've got like 10 or 12 students for a single instructor. We burn out the instructors. You burn out students, and pretty soon, especially if the student has a significant other or family. And what will frequently happen is after, you know, doing a series of weekends out there, their spouse will come up and they'll say, hey, look, you got to make a choice. Either it's the gliding or me. And I can tell you that we don't have a lot of glider pilots when that choice has to be made on that. And shame on us in the clubs, and particularly here in the States, for in a lot of cases not having a particularly good infrastructure set up for that. But here, what we're talking about would be considered a pretty radical change for Seattle Glider Council, because Seattle Glider Council has typically provided the facilities and the infrastructure to go soaring, including the tow planes. However, what we have not provided, though, essentially, is instruction, nor access to 2-place gliders. The closest that we've come to that is basically the SGCSF, which had a 2-place glider that provided for a syndicate. And that essentially was something that you would buy into with essentially a dozen other pilots, and then you get your timeshare to go and fly cross country. And that was typically with a mentor pilot and get some cross country training. But if we're going to change the model because that had limited success, here's an opportunity for us to take another stab at this. So in the case of Matt, you know, you're relying on another organization at SGC to try and get tows for that. But what it sounds like, what would be really handy is, and this is a question out to all of you as the members, what if you as an SGC member, by the very nature of joining up, had the opportunity to be able to rent a decent medium performance glider, 2-place glider, that you could go and you could either do your BFR, you could do training on it, you could take family or friends up, or you could get cross-country instruction in it. The intent of it would not be to basically say, okay, we've got a 2-place glider, you rent it and you go get to fly cross-country. That's not the intent of it. The intent of it is to actually provide our membership, the SGC membership, with an opportunity to get the training that they need, including cross-country flying with a mentor. Instead of relying on, well, does Evergreen show up or does Hood River show up, and are they willing to, you know, have it well enough organized? But I'm talking about the actual, having actual equipment available beyond just a tow plane within the SGC or the SGCSF, and having that availability in there.
Yeah, I mean, it is a radical shift from the philosophy, you know, and yeah, I don't know what the right answer is, but you know, it's anything will help at this point. It can really only go up from here. You know, part of the frustration that I had was they kind of, you know, the dust ups, you know, they said there was going to be a lot of classroom instruction and other stuff, but it was pretty minimal and kind of unorganized, the classroom instruction there. So it even kind of goes back to just, you know, is something as simple as, you know, and as somebody teaching a course on, McCready theory or thermaling or meteorology or something, and Mike Bamberg did some stuff and that was great. But yeah, I mean, he was so busy doing other stuff, and it takes more than one person presenting topics. There needs to be a whole series of different seminars, and they may even have to be given twice a day. Maybe once in the morning or once in the evening or something, just so that people can go fly and then come back, and maybe in the evening when everybody's gathered around or something. But I don't know. There's lots of ideas, but as far as getting a new, a dedicated airplane, I mean, that's going to be a tough one just from the capital expense perspective. That I don't know that that's a feasibility right now for the SGC, but
agreed. But I mean, but if we kind of taking some of that aside, what we're talking about is in an ideal situation, where would we like to be? We don't have to figure out that immediate stuff right now, but I think what we do need to figure out is where we want to go. And I think that's actually the most important thing. And then we'll figure out what does it take to get there.
Yeah.
I apologize. So I see that we've got Chris Clicks, Mark, and Rakla. Mark, I think you had your hand up first.
I was just going to say a couple other quick things. One is instead of necessarily having people come to Ephrata to use the tow plane, I think is that where the tow plane is, right? It's in Ephrata?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there a way to like rent out the tow plane to other clubs in the area to do stuff at their facility, for example?
Well, yeah, we have actually supported expeditions, for example, Methow and TWISP sorts of things.
Yeah.
There also have been expeditions that have been done elsewhere. That is a possibility. Part of it, though, is insurance is becoming more challenging, maintenance is becoming more expensive. But yes, better utilization of those resources is certainly something we should consider.
And I'm just gonna, I don't want to sound morbid or anything here, but when I look around the room, so to speak, most of us are not really that young anymore. And I know a few gliders have been willed, I guess, or donated or whatever in the past. Perhaps putting something in place to try and get folks to, put a little money in their will when they pass away, kind of thing. Not necessarily like, hopefully not tomorrow or the next day, but when, and we all know that's going to happen at some point. But I also kind of wanted to go back to the SSA, because I'm kind of wondering if the SSA gives out a lot of grants and scholarship and stuff like that, right? Is there a way to kind of work with them to, get a once a year kind of program, where maybe we can get 3 or 4 or 5, new students to get those scholarships and then come there to do that work at Ephrata, for example, that kind of thing. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Rockwell?
I'm Robert Rackle. I'm currently the bookkeeper for Puget Sound Soaring, Enumclaw. And we see a general slow decline in membership at the SGC, at PSSA. I don't know about Evergreen. And it seems to me it's time to think about more cooperation between the clubs to sustain each other. I'm not on the board of PSSA, but just thought that's something to be considered. And maybe the goals that are formed tonight and later could be more easily achieved in a cooperative environment.
Any idea why there is that decline?
Well, I think young people, they do come and fly with us, they get enthusiastic, and then they get pulled off by some other idea. And there's too many opportunities for young people to do something fun. And we don't always win. And we actually rarely win.
Good point. Very good point.
Thank you very much. I see Chris has his hand up. Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I kind of wanted to hear, what everybody else had to say, and I don't know how many of us were at the last meeting we had. Jim, you already said a lot of things that I wanted to say, but I kind of just wanted to reiterate what I had said at the last meeting, and that is that I think we need to, promote our facility and try to. First of all, we're an umbrella organization, and so if we promote the facility, which is our biggest asset, to other organizations to come and use it, that will increase the activity and increase our revenue. And to do that, we need to, make sure it's maintained and upgraded properly, so it doesn't continue to run down. And we need to bolster our organization of everything. Just if we're, we get together and really work on getting organized, and then run it more like a business, market ourselves, get out there. We can get organizations, other clubs to come to us and use our facility. We've never been a training organization. That's up to the individual clubs that are underneath us to train people and to instruct. But if we facilitate and provide the best means with our clubhouse and the facility out there, and provide the tow planes and the organization to help the clubs along in having these events and making them successful, that's the way I think we need to go. And that will generate revenue if we can bolster the organization and make sure we really work on that part. Anyway, I just wanted to get that in again. That's, we need to be enthusiastic about going forward, and I think it'll grow if we can get the facility into a top-notch thing, for the country to come and enjoy. It really is already one of the nicest facilities in the country. We just need to let people know it's there, and they'll come. Anyway, that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it is a pretty amazing facility. And to Mr. Rocco's point, I agree that we should be doing more coordination with the various organizations around. I think both of those things actually go hand in hand. And part of it, I think, is also driven by the need to actually have more organized events that would provide, ultimately, you want to have fun at the end of the day, and it's got to be safe, but it also comes in the form of training. And when we fly contests, really that's about making ourselves even better and sharper in cross country. And it's still training in many ways, but it's also about exploring ourselves and exploring the sky and trying to be the best pilots we can. So I think that we have some pretty good ideas coming out of this. The question is do we want to expand on that further, or do we leave it to just the clubs to provide the equipment and the instruction? And I think this is something that we're starting to run into some challenges with. The Boeing Club, when it was in existence,
I don't think we want to get in the business of training, doing what the clubs do. We want to help the clubs and support the clubs the best we can.
okay, yeah.
Can I, this is Randy Scott again. Can I push back against that just a little bit? In that, because what you're telling me is that if I join the SGC, I also have to join another organization to do something else. And so in my mind, I think that I think the SGC needs some training component for its own members so that, we can, as others have expressed, when we go over to Ephrata, we can do other things. We don't always have to go to another club to get things done. I mean, I think this is, I think.
Well, we've never been a club. We've been an umbrella organization. Seattle Glider Council's been the umbrella of the Northwest clubs. That's if you look at our whatever you call it.
Yeah, the founding documents. But I think that the organization really has to take a hard look at evolving. I know that's what it's been, but I mean, if we keep going down the same path we're going down, and I don't disagree with anything that you said, Chris, about being a place where other groups can come in and it can help our revenue with the SGC and we can get our name out there. I don't disagree with any of that. In fact, I think that's a really great long-term idea to fill up more weeks of the summer with folks coming to our facility. But I also think that the people that just belong to the SGC need some opportunities too within the club so that, I mean, I came from the outside and I saw the DG 1000, but as a member, nobody really took me aside and says, well, you can do this or you can do that or you can do this with that. And there really has been no real training opportunities through the SGC in my mind. So
yeah, because there's never been an intention to directly train. The training was always by the individual clubs in the Northwest.
Well, and I think that's where the debate should center, is where we want to go. Yeah. Does the current membership want to stay on that path?
It doesn't mean we can't change, but I'm thinking with the remote area of Ephrata, from Seattle or the metropolitan area, it's more difficult to run a training operation there than it is at the individual clubs.
Well, I don't disagree with you, Chris. I think that you bring up some good points, but I also understand fully what Randy's pointing to. And I mean, how many times have you been out there and you think, it'd be really great is if I could take a friend of mine who happens to be stopping by, or I want to take up a family member up for a flight, or I want to go fly with a buddy in a two-place glider, and I mean, for a while I had a Nimbus out there and it was great flying the Nimbus, but what I really missed was actually flying with somebody else. And the only time that opportunity existed was when the Boeing Club was out there and they happened to keep some of their gliders out there, or when Evergreen shows up out there. And, Evergreen's out there for maybe a week or two, but beyond that, there are not really that many opportunities to have that two-place glider available. And if we were to change the formula just a little bit, not changing the umbrella policy, and I'm not talking about providing primary training, but providing a two-place glider that could be used in a variety of different ways, including cross-country training and mentorship. also being able to provide a way of being able to give a lot of our members BFRs. I mean, one of the things about a lot of the SGC members is they won't join up with a local glider club in their area. But what they will do is they'll find their instructor buddy, and they'll have their instructor buddy pay for the flight, and they go fly in that local club. And you know what? They get their BFR and they go out, and that's great. And so they've saved themselves a couple of bucks, but in the long run, they really haven't benefited that local club. They've really kind of go fly in that local club. And you know what? They get their BFR and they go out, and that's great. And so they've saved themselves a couple of bucks, but in the long run, they really haven't benefited that local club. They've really kind of abused it in some ways. And this has been one of those dirty little secrets that's been going on for years. Now, if you want to look at what is the long-term benefit for the club, we need to be able to adapt and look around at what's happening. If we really want to grow our membership, and we want to get people excited about soaring, well, when those people show up at the fence there and they say, wow, that's really cool. How do I get a glider ride? Instead of saying, oh, sorry, we don't do any of that. If we had that way of being able to provide that experience for those people, get them excited about it, put them in touch with those clubs. But the way that you set that hook and you get somebody into the air, that first step is with a demonstration flight, doing a glider flight with somebody. The way that you get your friends excited about it is you give them a glider flight. And we have such amazing weather out there in Ephrata. And yes, it is a long ways, but when you're out there, if you had a two-place glider available to you, would you use it? As a member of SGC, would you be willing to pay, let's say, $100 or $150 an hour to go out and use a two-place glider? Oh, Rockwell, you're muted.
Yeah, I think, the previous, somebody mentioned organizing a subcommittee to look into all this. I think that's what needs to happen, really. I mean, there are a lot of good ideas. I think that we could definitely utilize a two-place just like we have been with the DG1000, but maybe we can make some money off rides and promote that a little bit. But we need to look closely at our revenue and our organization, bolster our whole organization, the way we organize things with the RV parking, with the management of the facility out there, with the tows. Everything needs to be looked at closely, and I think it can be done. It needs to be looked at more like a business.
Yeah, I agree. And the problem is what's our business these days? Because the business model that we've had in the place since the 1950s is no longer working. And that's what my concern is. Dennis, I noticed you got your hand up. Welcome. Glad you could join us for this meeting.
Yeah, no problem. I was just sort of sitting here absorbing all this stuff. And I've been a member of the SGC since about 1980, or maybe even before that. And I've seen a lot of things going on through the years. The only issue that I have is it's hard to tell what comes first, the chicken or the egg. We're already having a hard enough time getting a tow pilot out there. So not only are you going to have to get a two-seater, then you're going to have to also try to organize instructors. Where you're going to get them from, and then also on top of that, you definitely need to have a tow pilot that's interested in committing for that time frame. I'm not saying no to it. I'm just saying that this all needs to be looked at carefully, and over and above that, of course, the cost of getting a decent two-place, and then if you're instructing, you start talking about paying instructors. I don't know about in the States because, of course, I'm a Canadian, but up here you can't do that. If you pay the guy, then it becomes a commercial operation, and the whole thing gets to be a problem. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw in 2 cents worth. And I do think something that certainly needs to change. But I think Chris is right. We need to promote heavily the facility that we have, because that is our main asset.
Yeah, you made a lot of good points, Dennis, and I totally agree. I think it's the promote the facility and promote events. We've got people that are coming, from a long way away just to utilize that facility, but we're not even promoting it at all. We could get a lot more clubs coming to Ephrata and utilizing it, and that would increase the activity automatically.
Can I posit a suggestion on how we proceed with this, Jim? It's Brian Hart.
Yeah, please do.
I think what we need is that a subcommittee, but I think that if you just start out with representatives of the different clubs, you've got the kernel of a group that can talk about this and get feedback from all the local groups. We've had Rackle here, who comes from the Enan Club group. I'm from Hood River. Got Evergreen guys here, because I don't know how many clubs we have around the Northwest. Without buying that glider yourself, you're really kind of stuck with seeing this as an extension or a supporting group for the clubs. I think you could have a win-win there with the clubs, but I think it's going to take probably sort of an informal subcommittee that's made up of members of the different clubs. We can ask Mike Bamberg to represent Willamette maybe, and just have a couple brainstorming sessions on what could be done. And I think you'll find that you need their opinions of those people, because they're your core constituency right now. My opinion when we first came was this was an evergreen operation. I mean, that's what it looked like to us. Mark Stanfield brought us up. We wouldn't have known about it at all had Mark not gotten into cross country. I'm seeing more of it now, but from our perspective, it was a 5-hour drive up there, and it looked very much like it looked to us like an extension of Evergreen. It's not that. That's clear now, but I don't know that the other organizations really have the vested interest, or the history with it, recent history with it, let's say. And I think that having a group that could sit down and discuss this in a forum like this, but represent the different clubs, then you'd find out, how much, could the clubs work out to take a week here or a week there and offer services to the membership of SGC while they're there. Maybe that's the answer, instead of SGC owning a glider. Maybe it's Hood River bringing the K21 up and opening its training week to anybody in the SGC that wants to come out. Maybe you find that kind of a partnership that would work. I think that's to start with a discussion that involves members from these different organizations.
That's great input. Thank you very much. And Brian, we might actually be hitting you up to be a representative for Hood River there.
I'll do that. Just don't ask me to be captain of the team.
Okay, Alan, I see you've got your hand up. Alan Curlin, I think you're still on mute. Did you want to say something? Well, I guess not. Okay. Well, you know what? Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything that they want to throw into this? If not, what we're going to do is we have recorded this live, and I'll be talking with the board. I really like the idea of forming a subcommittee and taking some of the different ideas that have come forward and putting this together, especially trying to see what we can do to increase the activity and coordination of the SGC. The other parts of it obviously remain in question. I think there's a lot that we need to discuss and figure out and come back to you as the membership. If there is no further discussion, if nobody else has anything, I'll put in one last item. So coming this Wednesday, you should see a ballot arrive for the elections of the next Seattle Glider Council Board of Directors. So please be sure to vote. Your vote counts. And it would be very much appreciated. Also, for those of you who have been nominated, please indicate whether or not you are willing to run for the board. So nominations have all actually gone out, and those are set up. So before we adjourn, does anybody else have anything else they'd like to bring up in closing comments?
See you at the banquet.
That sounds good. All right. Well, for those of you that are signed up for the banquet, we're going to have a great time. We'll see you there, and also the awards. And the others, well, we'll hope to see you out at the airport here shortly. We'll be talking again, most likely in January. So thanks again for calling in, and have a good night.